Now, bridging the gap, bridging to not even the gap, but bridging to China in the Middle East, the emerging markets. Now, obviously, there was a time where we were it as far as capitalism goes, as far as business goes. The United States was the main guy on the block here. Now it doesn't work that way. India is coming into its own. Many little countries are starting to come into their own, and all of a sudden we have capitalism flowing through many little countries, and at the same time, what we were founded on seems to start to be diluted here. You got a kind of an interesting situation in the world.
Yeah, by all means. It's really staggering, and a lot of Americans are being run over by an economic freight train, and they didn't even know the train was coming. We're very patriotic in this country, and we're also somewhat isolationist. We don't really need to leave. A lot of Americans go right within our own borders for tourism and business and everything else, and that's great because we have so much to offer, but the drawback is that we don't really realize just how staggeringly fast the rest of the world is changing and leaving us behind. 20 years ago, there was only one country that had a bullet train. Now there's 25 or something like that. And for the United States to make a bullet train, say, from San Diego to L.A., it would take us another 20 years.
Sure.
You have second world countries who are surpassing us in some things like cell phone usage, and we're ranking lower and lower on education and medicine and even internet, which we really started in this country.
I think one of the biggest problems, and I don't want to stray too far from topic tonight, but one of the biggest problems that we have been so tolerant and so wanting to quote unquote understand everyone else and not offend anybody that we have diluted who we are as a country. People come across the border by the droves, and my goodness, my dad came here as an immigrant. There's not a problem with that. It's the illegal where the problem is. But if you're going to come to this country, my dad got here in the early 1900s, and he became an American. He came from Russia, and he loved what he got, and he became part of the country. We have people coming here today, and I think the biggest problem that we have, Bruce, is people come here, they run away from something because it wasn't good, and then they try to make it here like it was there. And there's where the problem is.
Sure. Yeah, we have drifted in many ways. You mentioned this kind of massive drift away from capitalism even. When the scope and scale of this bailout package is what I call definitive. It is definitive to the nation. It is so large. All of the projects that people complain about, welfare, the bridges to nowhere, every pork project, all of those combined don't even come close to this. So it's just like if somebody spends 40 hours a week as a police officer, they're a police officer. It may not be their only identity. They may be a parent or active in their church or whatever, but they're a police officer. If a country spends ultimately $5 trillion on a project that is not capitalism, well, then it's no longer a capitalist country.
Okay, but now let's you bring up a very good point. If we're not heading for socialism, I don't know what we are with healthcare, and the list goes on. We're not looking at models from other countries, and I think that's one of the major problems that we face here. We have to say, if we want to be this particular way, then what happened with other countries that went that way? Are we going to suffer the same thing? I really believe in my heart of hearts, we're not looking ahead. Somehow we've got riveted to what we should be, and we've lost one of the most important things that we had at one time, a common definition of who we are, why we are, what we are, and which way we're going. And this is the most powerful country in the world, but the way to defeat it is from within, and I think our own defeat is going to be if we implode, and that's possible if we're not very careful.
Yeah, a lot of people call this un-American. It's a word that's used often to describe it, and
sure.
And it is definitive, and we're really moving away from all of the values that so many Americans treasure.
No, absolutely, no question about it. And I have to go back and take a look at, I was brought up in the 50s. I was a teenager in the 50s, and I saw a world there that was completely different than the world here. Okay, we have to change. We have to maneuver, and we have to adapt and overcome, quote unquote. And we can do that, but at the same time, if we dilute so much of who and what we are, the very country that the principles that we were founded on, it's not going to be anymore. And there's going to be a lot of kids out there who want to be, they want to make the world happy for everybody and kumbaya. They're going to end up getting their heads cut off someday by somebody who is in power who says we can do that because that's what we do. There's the problem.
Yeah, you mentioned that we haven't planned for this. because we are designed to be a capitalist country. And when I say that we're really no longer capitalist, it kind of shocks people, but it's hard for them to argue because it is a definitive part of our budget. This isn't some little, bridge that somebody put in the budget. It's definitive. But we haven't planned for it, so we could end up with the worst of both worlds. I heard an entrepreneur joke one time. He said, well, I wish we would go to socialism because then I wouldn't have to work so hard. I'd just sit back and get a check. But his joke was that we haven't planned for socialism either. So, at least the proponents of socialism could say, well, here's what our system is and here's what we plan for, and we try and make it work. We're trying to make capitalism work, but we're not implementing it. So, hopefully it will come out better than that, but it could end up kind of the worst of both worlds.
Okay, Bruce, let me make you I'm going to give you the proverbial magic wand, and you are now king of America. Nobody can do anything unless they ask you, and when you say it happens, it happens. How do we fix it?
Well, I'd do what George Washington did, which is he said he didn't want to be king. And the next thing I would do is I would go back to our roots, go back to democracy. When 85% of the public disagrees with something, you follow what the representatives are supposed to do, and go back to capitalism. This problem. It's funny to hear these members of Congress say, you cost us all this money, and I say, well, wait a minute. If you go and give your neighbor $50,000 because your neighbor continually does stupid things and comes to you and asks for more and more money, do you then go back and say, hey, you cost me $50,000? No, you stop giving them money. So I would just go back to capitalism, and capitalism, there's nothing in there that says, you go and give money to the failures from the ones who aren't failures.
See, another concern that I have, and I've watched this go down, which is interesting, and I know that there are other people who have looked at this also. We went to Iraq. We went to war in Iraq. They had a monster running that company. They found dead bodies all over the place, and I don't want to get into the why or the wherefore we got there, but we did get there. And now there are schools there. Now women are being treated equally there. The world has changed in Iraq. Did we see 1 ounce of oil? Did we see 1 ounce of payback? No.
Well, the oil companies are there. I mean, it's an area of the world that I follow. I don't do too much in Iraq. I'm in more of the peaceful parts of the region. But it's a whole nother discussion. I mean, it's
that as much as we are disliked around the world, when something comes up, when something happens, guess who's there to help out? We are. Yeah, we've done a lot of great things in history, no doubt about it. We've led the world, and we're respected by the world a lot. There are people still, 40 plus years later who remember us landing on the moon as a shining example of greatness. And a lot of great science came from that. And sadly, if somebody were to go on the moon next, who would it be? It wouldn't probably be us. No, we can't.
More capable.
Bruce, we can't afford it.
Right.
Bruce Fenton, let me ask you this: is there a website we can find you at?
Sure. My company is Atlantic Financial, and AtlanticFinancial.com, and then I have a newsletter which is called Fenton Report, FentonReport.com.
So how do we jump on the bandwagon here? And when I say jump on the bandwagon, we can talk about it, and we talk and we talk and we talk, but there's action. There's got to be something that we can do to change things, and it's got to change grassroots. It can't change from the top up. It's got to change from top down. It has to change from the bottom up.
Yeah, the other day I started a Facebook group called No More Bailouts from Congress, and I don't know what will happen with it. There's a few like that. There's others other than the one that I made, but pretty easy for people to find on Facebook, mine or one of the many groups out there. There are grassroots efforts. There are different politicians. There are people like Ron Paul, whether you agree with him politically or not. If you don't, you can find, Dennis Kucinich, who's also, there are two very different politicians,
sure.
One Democrat, one Republican, both very much against this. So whichever way your political leaning is, either, support either Dennis or Ron or both. And those two members of Congress. And it is grassroots. And if we look at the accounts of our founding fathers, they didn't sit back and watch. I won't pick on any particular TV show, but the show. They didn't sit back and watch all the sports and nonsense. People are much more concerned about who's winning this or that contest on TV than about And by the way, you add up these bailouts, it's thousands of dollars each. If somebody knocked on your door and said, "Give me $9,000," and they came back 3 weeks later and said, "Give me $9 more grand," you'd start to wonder, well, where's my $9,000 going? And a lot of Americans would say, "I don't have $9,000." So this is a serious, serious matter that affects us and our children and grandchildren and maybe our whole nation. So it is something that people should take a lesson from the Founding Fathers and not sit back on the couch, as comfortable as that may be, but really do something about it. These members of Congress listen, and there's only very few that even bother participating in the process and communicating with their elected officials. I'll tell you what, you go on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, and you get 100 or 200 people to show up at the local office of a member of Congress when they come back after this session ends. They're going to notice 100 people. That's nothing with today's media. I mean, just
Sure.
listen to all the people listening right now on your show. If 1 in 10 did that, we could make a difference right there. So you can go into your local community. If you don't like this, or if maybe your member of Congress was one of the ones who spoke out against it, go support him or her. Or if they didn't, you show up at their door when they come back. They work for us.
That's what that's what speaks, and I really believe that that's what speaks. And if we want it, we have to go to Congress, we have to go to the legislators, but you've got to show up in force. 3 or 4 people are not going to do it. You show up with a few thousand, they're going to listen. Why? Because you're going to vote for them. So you've got the power there. Hey, Bruce Fenn, www.atlanticfinancial.com, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
You too.
I'm Michael Ray.